All right. Hello and welcome to the Service Design Drinks Berlin meetup and community. We love that you are joining. We have probably the most people joining to this event that we've ever had before. And so we are so excited to have you all here. We're a little bit honored today as well to be at Hawthorne, and we'll talk about them a little bit later. And to also have some people in the crowd, other people in the crowd joining us in person as well. That's very exciting. We figured they probably didn't want to be on screen straight away. All right. Yeah. So let's go. Let's start off with, does everyone have a drink? So we, of course, as a service drink, Berlin. And if that's tea, coffee, baby milk, or a cocktail, I normally drink rum or whiskey, but today I'm sticking with beer, and hopefully I can finish the talk speaking clearly to everybody and not embarrass myself like last time. Anyway. All right, we would love everyone to be inclusive, so please keep your language civil, but please ask questions, please engage, tell us where you're joining from. Mountain Dew, good choice there, Alan, thank you. We have some people from the Bay Area, from Frisco, Netherlands, Berlin, all around the place. You can jump into Slido to talk with us there. We look forward to meeting you. If you want to share your LinkedIn profile or any way that we can get in touch with you or talk, then please feel free to do so. Oh, we've got someone having yogurt and coffee. Yogurt in coffee? I hope not. Maybe separated. We're all about learning, and this is what we're going to learn a bit about today as well. Okay. So today it's just myself, Adam, and also my lovely co-host.
Dee, hi.
And we're also supported with Mela, Robolino, and Marty as well. We are all in the service design, product design, and facilitation and innovation space. And we are the nice people that host this lovely event. All right. Okay, we're going to jump over to our host straight away. Like we said, this is actually an in-person hybrid event, and we are getting used to doing that as well. So let me do a little bit of technological magic, and then we are going to have a word from our sponsor today. All right, there he is on the lovely face.
Hi guys.
Hello.
Is it on? Is it on?
It's on. It's over to you. You can tell me.
Oh, it's not sure that you're going to the mic. I don't know why. Yeah, great to be here, and it's awesome that you guys decided to come. Just a little quick introduction to us. We're working here at Hawthorne. We're part of the Heuristic Group, and we're actually like using almost the whole building. So every part of it is kind of some kind of an agency. We're a strategy consulting agency, and yeah, just let me introduce you what we do. We're doing three parts actually. We are doing transformation, we do brand management and innovation. Especially for brand management, we do branding, positioning, vision, etc. A lot of great clients, mostly in the mobility area, mobility industry, and also transformation. So we have specialized on employer branding and strategy there. Do a lot of trainings, do a lot of workshops with them, so to internalize what kind of identity they are looking for. And the theme also for today is more like innovation, and that's why we're like really proud and really looking forward to meet you also, because we also have a big strength in innovation. We do product and service design as well. And a lot of our core strength is also trend scouting, so doing futuristic, whatever insights, and also workshops that what are all about future, and innovation labs as well. So just go a bit into what we believe in, so you know us a little bit better. From the innovation perspective, we have three core strengths and or core focuses, values, so to say. For us, innovation drives growth. So differentiation and innovation are like the main drivers. And what is also special about Hawthorne, that we also believe again about the future, because we know that today's user and customer are not tomorrow's users and customers. That's why we are always looking ahead, looking about what kind of behaviors are tomorrow relevant, and also to broaden the customer base from our clients. And as well, what also specialized in for us is that we always curious and wanted to learn. I wanted to recombine things, and in every product we are trying to do these three things, like to drive the growth, to look ahead and to the tomorrow customers, and as well to recombine and learn from inside to outside and give consulting and new ideas. Yeah, and our approach for that, last one, and then it's fine. I'm sorry. No, we have like our main goal is to secure and design a future for our clients. So, and we're trying to do that strategically, and it's the interdisciplinary. Sorry, my English. I always like struggle with that word. I don't know why. Anyways, and we trying to do that in 4 like main categories. We are focusing on in our business design, in our innovation core. This is what I'm always saying, and where, like, I don't know, it's like our identity is like looking for what is about the future. I actually working in a project, looking for opportunities for autonomous driving, or what kind of customers is the mobility areas needing, and what kind of services they're looking for. This is what we're doing there, as well as like one of our bases is data science as well. Industry expertise, we have a great network, what we're also trying to establish and use our partners. And what our topic is also today, user research. We do a lot of surveys. We see a lot of that is one of like the main course there as well. And we try to broaden our approach as well in service design. And so we're really looking forward to this meeting and meeting you guys. And yeah, hopefully it will be a great event. And yes, and also the last one is we also are like building up our team. This is our team for, and we are also looking for new bright minds as well, and especially in that innovation area. And yeah, if you're curious, you want to join, you want to take a look, just check out our website, LinkedIn profile, and yeah. And let's start with your hand. Thank you for listening.
All righty, let's jump back over to here.
Yeah, are we back? We're back. Thank you, Vico, so much. And thank you to Vaughn for having us. It's a really great agency, and this building is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, the sunset was killer. So for all those that didn't manage to make it today, we're sorry to make you a little bit jealous, but hopefully it's okay and you'll forgive us. Okay, I just realized that I blocked the screen that I need to talk from. Okay, so yes. We're all here to have an amazing fireside chat today about user research with a lovely, well, I would say friend of mine, Nikki, and also, you know, aspirational hero, I would say, in the field of user research. And just trying to make you blush, it's okay. And yeah, so we're going to have an amazing chat. We've got some questions already prepped. We have some fantastic questions from you at home and in the office. Hello, people here. And that we are going to ask Nikki, and we're going to have a guided conversation and a really good deep dive into the challenges around user research, building that empathy and understanding the people. Do you want to say a quick hello, Nikki?
Hello. Yes. I'm super excited to be here. Yeah, I can't wait to kind of like dig in and answer as many questions as I can. If your question doesn't get answered, always feel free to reach out to me on like LinkedIn and stuff, and I will do my best to answer anything that I can't hear.
Yes, that's amazing. You get a first-hand open invite to question Nikki on LinkedIn. I've used that a few times actually, so it definitely works. Great service for all the people out there. Okay, as we said, we would love to further our hybrid event kind of themes and mottos. And we have some great people already joining us from all the different places on Slido. We have some people from the Bay Area, Manchester, Italy, India. Wow, Columbus, Ohio. That's very specific. And a few from Berlin as well. Thank you that no one's put your personal address there. That's helpful. But it's good to have you all here from wherever you're joining. If you have any questions, like what is the cute little doggo from Nikki's, what is the doggo's name? What is Nikki's doggo's name? Oh my gosh, sorry. Then you can also throw that in here as well. And the code is 232623, and we will have that up a few times if anyone gets lost. All right, enough jibber jabber. Oh, spoilers. No, stop sharing. All right, we are back and we're going to jump in a little bit. So to get us started, as per usual and as per tradition, we have a few rapid fire questions for you, Nikki, just to understand a little bit more about who you are. So the first one, of course, is which you did a great explanation already, is who are you? What's your role, and what does your role involve?
Cool. Yeah. So I'm Nikki. I think that hasn't been introduced enough. So yeah, I'm Nikki. I am the founder and managing director of, that's what somebody told me to call myself, of something called User Research Academy, which is a company to help people get into the fields of user research or help them advance their knowledge in user research. So what does that involve? It's quite different from a general like user researcher role. It involves me doing a lot of admin work. So accounting stuff. Not fun, but the fun part is I get to mentor a bunch of people and teach a bunch of people about user research and create some content that some of you might have known about on like Dscout and Dovetail, and do fun things like this. And I get to be my own boss. So good and bad. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell. And that's, yeah, this is Poncho, most importantly.
Hello, Pancho. Let's not try waking him up. Otherwise, I'm sure you have to share your attention. Yeah, so maybe you can also tell us, interesting, like where are you joining us from tonight?
Yeah, so I am in Jersey, and that's the old Jersey, not the new Jersey. So
it's not Jersey Shore. No.
Yet I'm not on Jersey Shore. I'm on Jersey seaside front. So Jersey is technically part of the UK when they want to be, or their own country when they don't want to be. And they're kind of off the coast of France, pretty much, but part of the UK. So I can see France from like a beach that's 5 minutes away from me.
Okay. Yeah. We're just hearing from the
yeah, I'm seeing that come through too.
Yeah, so we're just trying to figure that out. You can, I don't know if people
pin them.
You can use this button in the top right corner of Zoom where you can adjust your own view, and you've got gallery view and speaker view, but each person has to adjust that on their own computer. But we've got the spotlight on Nikki. So can you let us, okay, everyone's the same. Can you use the chat again and like let us know?
Yay.
Working now. All right.
Working?
Oh, thank you, Maureen, for updating us. Fantastic.
Great.
We're still, yay.
And
Nikki is back. Nikki and Poncho are back with us.
They just wanted to
all the way from, just needed a clearer image of Poncho. Can you just zoom the camera in on Poncho? I think he's
just talk from here.
All right. So a few other rapid fire questions. What is your favorite meal to have when you want to celebrate?
Creme brulee. Ooh, which isn't really a meal, but that goes to show how I eat. So
good. I'll count it. If you were to invite anyone to dinner that isn't your family, alive or dead, then who would it be and why?
I have to pick two because, of course, I can't just pick one. Oprah, because interview.
Oprah.
Like Oprah's amazing. And the second person would be J.R.R. Tolkien, the writer of Lord of the Rings, because I'm obsessed beyond belief with him. And well, more of his work. I don't really know him since he died.
Gossip and Rumors says that you're also an inspiring writer, novelist of fantasy and fiction. Is this true? Can you confirm or deny this?
Is that true? I feel like, oh my God. Yes, it is. Fantasy, sci-fi, and but most recently psychological thrillers.
Ooh, okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
What was your first paid job? What was the job you first got paid for?
So I was a tennis instructor because I played tennis like almost professionally. And so I was a tennis instructor from the age of like 13 or 12. I'm not sure if I was allowed to be paid, but they paid me. So I went with it. It was like $2, but hey, it was a lot back then.
Always innovating. I love it. Okay. And then last but not least, could you just give us like a 2-minute rundown from maybe like not quite the moment of birth, but a little bit after that until now, a quick little history or your LinkedIn history, let's say.
Sure. So really quick, went to undergrad, loved psychology, always wanted to do psychology, tried to do pre-med, failed miserably because math and science. So did psychology, decided, wow, I want to work in a mental hospital, did a master's in psychology, worked in a mental hospital, cried a lot, realized I don't have boundaries, found user experience because somebody at a party in New York City told me about it. And I was like, what's this? Tried to be a designer, failed miserably because I'm not visual, found user research, and I guess I succeeded.
Okay.
And have had subsequent weird user research jobs in the interim, but have been in the field for about like 8 or 9 years.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
And a small stint there at Zalando as well with me, which is
Yes.
where I became a big fan of your work. All right, let's dive into the topic about tonight. If you've got questions from the crowd, please throw them in. I'm not sure if there's any there already yet, but let's just check the Slido. Oh, yeah. Okay. We're going to ask one. Okay. All right. We'll get into those questions in just a second. But as a starting point, maybe you can talk a little bit about like, okay, you've heard it been a few things, but quite honestly and quite spectacularly, that word. And what have you found is like, now you've been doing user research. What is a user researcher? Maybe just like the, I don't know, Webster's dictionary definition, or what do you consider to be a good user researcher?
Yeah, so for me, so Webster Dictionary, a user researcher is somebody who helps product teams make better decisions, which is cool. Yeah, that's what we do. But what I would say a user researcher, or really like a researcher, is anybody with a high degree of empathy and curiosity and the ability to actively listen. So if you don't call yourself a user researcher, but you have those things, you do have the ability to do user research, because user research is really that intersection between empathy and curiosity. So that's what I would say. And I was actually explaining this to somebody earlier today, where like, imagine that, you know what, this is very American, so I will let my American show right now. So imagine you are looking at a target to shoot the target, because in America, we like shooting things. So if you're looking at the target and you shoot it, and somebody says, close your eyes, right? You might hit the target because you're lucky, but likelihood is you're not going to hit the target at all. So that's a product team trying to make decisions, and user research means opening your eyes so that you have a better ability to hit that target.
That's
well
awesome.
explained.
Yeah.
Great metaphor. Yeah, I like it. A little bit American, but that's okay. We'll forgive you.
Okay.
So, I mean, you've worked obviously quite a number of years in the user research field, and probably quite a lot of different constellations and organizations. How does user research normally play out for you, or how have you seen it play out in the different constellations of how user research works in companies? Or
Sure. So I've seen a few different methods. The number one method that I have encountered is the solo researcher who works across many different product teams. In this role, you are kind of the go-to person. Generally speaking, you tend to be more reactive because you have a lot of stuff going on. But what you're doing is, as the researcher, you're working across, generally speaking, let's call them scrum teams or squads. That's kind of some of that jargon there, and you're trying to help those teams answer those questions. That's something that I have encountered the most as like the solo user researcher. At larger companies or with bigger teams, you tend to see there's technically 3 different types. One of them is embedded. So the researchers are embedded within that product team. So they're working like really closely with a certain product team who is either like on an area of the product, a stage of the product. And they are, as a researcher, you're like in that with them. You're not really going around to other teams like you would do as like that solo user researcher. So that's one method. The other one is internal consultancy, almost. So this is as a researcher, we're a central team and we're working across an organization, and we're kind of given out to product teams to help them answer their questions. We're not dedicated to one specific area. Then there's the hybrid model, which is somewhere in between, where you have some embedded researchers and also some researchers on a central team. Those embedded researchers are like stuck into that topic in that team. And those those researchers on the central team could be doing a variety of things, such as more generative, like discovery-based research, or running like usability tests that kind of cover multiple areas. We're doing things like democratizing research or research repositories. So those are the ways. To be fair, I haven't worked in consultancy. Like I haven't worked in an agency before. That's like the place that I'm not familiar with. But what I've heard, it's similar to like a consultant role where you kind of come in, do some work, throw the insights, and then kind of leave.
Yeah. I've experienced that also in the service design world as well, and working in agencies. The PDF in the drawer is a bane of my existence. But one question that I have, maybe because there's also quite a few people that I think are looking to break into this field of research, and I love this. Like if I looked at the different organizations and maybe I was talking to new organizations, I think that what you just gave as a summary is a really good way to like, what are the models that you're doing user research? Maybe one question, if you have an advice for, this is really early in the night to talk about this, but maybe if you have advice, or what do you think is maybe the best way to set up user research in organizations? And then if I was like, what is the pros and cons of maybe being a solo as opposed to like an internal agency, as opposed to being embedded? How would I know where to go if I wanted to be a user researcher? Or
Sure.
where should I go?
Okay, so if you are just starting out, there are 2 ways to go, as you said, solo or on a team, generally speaking. I started out as a solo user researcher, but I did it at, I'm like a startup person. I love startups. That's like my jam, small startups, awesome, cool, build the research framework. What I would say is determine your level of comfort first. Are you comfortable going into an organization and being the person that gets asked all the questions and being the expert? So you will be that if you go into a solo user research position. That's not to say that you shouldn't if you're new. It's just kind of managing your expectations. The pro of that, you get to do everything. You get to fail, you get to learn, you get to just completely experience the whole spectrum of research, because there's nobody who's helping you with stuff like recruitment. There's generally no panel, like if you're the first and solo user researcher. The one thing that I will say is if you're going to be a solo user researcher, and if that's your first job, make sure that your manager has extensive experience with user research or is a user researcher. My first job, my manager was a UX designer. She's fantastic, but I couldn't ask her for advice. So I hit a ceiling there pretty early on, and you don't want to do that early in your career. You want to try and learn as much from where you are immediately. And so that's one thing, is like the pro is just like, you get to learn everything. It's so super cool. I would recommend it, but that's because I'm biased. The other way, in terms of teams, I prefer, which is like the anti-word for user researchers, prefer and preference. I prefer embedded work. The reason that I prefer embedded work is because you get into depth in a topic, an area, and you can really understand what the team's needs are, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and really start to like become an expert in that area. So that's like my preferred kind of method when you're on a team. The con that comes with that is that you're stuck. If you hate the subject matter, you're going to hate your job. Or if the topic isn't interesting, you're not going to like it. And that's where that like more consultancy, internal consultancy comes in, where you're kind of hopping around topics. You might have more freedom for different methodologies if there are different topics and different teams. So that's quite nice, but the internal consultancy is also tough because you are hopping around. And you're kind of having to like get reintroduced to teams, reintroduced to topics, and you don't come in with like any sort of level of knowledge. So I would say those are kind of like the pros and cons. It's kind of quite nice to also join a team if you feel like you want to learn from a team, because you do learn quite a lot from others when you do join that team setting. But yeah, I mean, it's really, it's up to your like comfort level and like the kinds of challenges that you're looking for and the kinds of experiences that you're wanting. So like really think critically, like, do I want to work at like a fast-paced startup where I'm trying to do everything and I have like one person on my side who's like helping me out? Or do I want to join a team where I can learn like the structure and the processes from these people and then eventually adapt them to whatever it is that makes sense for me? I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, I think there are lots of questions coming in, so I can definitely tell it was quite helpful as well. And I think the thing you mentioned about the industry, and then also if you're a junior designer, like figuring out if you can level up from the people who can help you and where your ceilings might be, and also where you're getting your support from, I think is super important. How did you also decide what industries you wanted to go to or not go to? Because you've also worked in quite a variety of industries, I would say, right?
Yeah, the first few, I had no choice. Like it's one of those things where you apply and you're like, hey, fingers crossed, I got something. Like my first job, I think it was in hospitality management, which is fascinating. And it was actually B2B. So I entered research through like B2B research, which I really appreciate.
Also an interesting clarification, if you want to do B2C or B2B or B2E, it's very different, I would assume. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I would say I'm very grateful that I started with B2B because I find B2B more challenging in the fact of like recruitment tends to be more challenging. The software tends to be more complex. Things can change drastically over short periods of time. And yeah, your level of knowledge needs to be deeper to understand the users. But I find B2B much more fascinating, and maybe because that's like home for me. So yeah. But the subsequent industries that I've worked in or consulted for, yeah, for a while there was like no choice in the fact that I like wanted a job and some money to live. But like I'm very passionate now about like things like mental health, education, animal welfare. Like those are the things that I will kind of consult for and go for now.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think choosing the industry is also something that maybe comes after the experience part. I would say first developing practice, developing knowledge, and then thinking industry-wise, specifically where you want to go to next is probably step 2 in a very, I mean, we would love to work in the right industry, in the right job, and in the right format straight away when we enter the industry. But I would say it's something that comes in time and that you might, you can, every step is a step in the right direction, as you also shared in your your story as well, which was good. Okay, I wanted to move on a little bit, and maybe one last question, and this kind of area is for those that are maybe like working with user researchers, want to get into user research, think user research is an interesting career, or have heard a lot. What is like the biggest like distance between what you would hear in theory should be happening and what actually happens in practice?
Yeah, so it's interesting because like one of the things that I struggle with the most is teaching people how to have conversations with other people. So like that generally feels like the biggest jump between the theory and the actual practice, because you can learn all these techniques like the TED-W technique of asking open-ended questions, which is like an acronym for how you start to phrase questions. That's something that I teach a lot, and it's fantastic. Or you look at the 5 whys question technique or laddering, all of those techniques you can read about. But when you get in front of a user, suddenly you're like, what did I learn? You know, it's like kind of like sitting down for a test. And you're like, oh, suddenly I don't remember anything. And it's very easy to ask yes or no questions. It's very easy to ask leading questions and bias questions. All of those things are very easy to do. I do them too. I see a lot of people who are more advanced doing them as well. But what I would say is like, in your day-to-day life, when you're talking with other colleagues, when you're talking with friends and family, when you're talking to your dog, whatever, ask open-ended questions. You know, like practice those open-ended questions, and like, because you're not going to be sitting in front of users enough to practice theoretically if you're just learning the theory. Like my husband is so sick of TED-W, but he uses it when he's interviewing candidates. So he can't get mad at me. But you know, like if we're talking about something and he's upset, I'll be like, oh, tell me how you feel, or like, you know, explain what you mean by that. And he's like, oh, stop. But like, that's the thing, is like, you want, like, practice it in your day-to-day life. And that's how you get from the theory to the practical. But I would say that being comfortable sitting in front, sorry, that was a really funny comment by Bobby. Sitting, I just totally lost my train of thought.
Good job, Bobby. Thank you.
but yeah. So I mean, honestly, so just make sure that you're trying to ask those open-ended questions as much as you can, and just try to practice those. And I would say that would be the biggest jump.
We have a question.
I just want to add on to this a little bit.
Yeah.
That with this difference that Adam asked between what it looks like from the outside and what actually happens in practice being a user researcher, what's something that people might not expect and be unpleasantly surprised by, that they weren't expecting as part of user research?
So I don't know if this is necessarily unexpected, but it might be unpleasant. User research is like a bit negative, in the fact that, like, as researchers, we're here to point out what's going wrong much more than we are to point out what's going well. So like I was teaching one of my students actually heuristic evaluations and how to conduct a heuristic evaluation the other day. And she was like, oh, so like, should I point out what's going right? Like what people are doing well? And I was like, not really. You know, like, yes, you can talk through like maybe the top 3 things that they are doing well. But like, the problem is when you start talking about the good things, that's what people tend to latch onto. People being other colleagues, that you're trying to convince to do other things. Yeah. So like unexpectedly, like you could feel quite negative in that sense. It's not that like we're sitting here being, you know, downers all the time and being like everything sucks. It's just that you tend to focus more on what's going wrong rather than what's going right. But on the other side of that, you focus on what's going wrong to make things better. Yeah.
I guess you become really good at also delivering shitty news in the best possible way. So I think that's also a key skill that I would say user researchers are able to do. Sorry, I just saw Alan's comment. Yep. So that actually brings me to another point in terms of talking with stakeholders, people within the field, and maybe some more critical questions about now that you're in this job and now that you're actually working as a user researcher, maybe like, yeah, how do you, one of the questions that we got quite often from the crowd is, you know, how do we deal with stakeholders? How do we get buy-in? How do we synthesize for better adoption? This kind of thing. And I know that you have plenty of articles online as well, and we will definitely be sharing them as well further on. But maybe, I guess you get these questions also all the time. Maybe you could just tell us some of the common advice that you give us or give other people when it comes to, okay, I'm working at this company, no one seems to be listening to me, or I'm a solo user researcher. How do I get the buy-in from these and these people? What are some of the things that you tell the people?
So for a really long time, I felt like I had to convince people. So I was all about like convince stakeholders the value of user research, convince stakeholders to do research. And then I realized that that is like running uphill, and nobody likes to run uphill. And well, maybe some people do, which is very impressive. But I would say like a lot of people, the number one reason that I see pushback from stakeholders is due to fear and anxiety. So we have to treat stakeholders, and I've kind of stopped calling them stakeholders and started calling them colleagues, because stakeholders can sometimes have a negative connotation. But we have to treat colleagues as our users. So if somebody's not listening to us, we have to ask them why they're not listening to us. We can't guess. We can't like, it's the same as like product iteration, right? Like if you're guessing, like you can try a million different things and nothing might stick. The 1,000,001 one might stick, but like what we can do is we can start to get to know our colleagues a little bit better in terms of asking them, hey, like, what was your last experience with user research? You know, you like, how did it go? How did it go poorly? Like what was a bad experience? Like what are some of your like fears about doing user research? And you don't need to use like such a loaded word as fears, but like, what are you worried about with like doing user research? And oftentimes it's like time, money, effort, like these kinds of things. And so, but once you know what people are scared of, or what people are worried about, or what their internal obstacles are, you can start giving them solutions to those. So like if time is an issue, de-scope your research, narrow the scope of your research down so that you do smaller studies that can be done quicker. I know that might be disappointing at first, but what you want to do is you want to kind of generate this interest by playing to what your users, your colleagues need from you at that time. And I promise you that if you do that long enough, and you start to like show, hey, we can do these small things. Hey, this is a quick study, and I found these really important notes. They will start to buy into it. It will take time though. Like you can't expect them like to suddenly switch on and be like, hey, yeah, this is great. Like it can take me like to a new in a new company, like it can take me up to 3 to 6 months to get buy-in, consistent buy-in from stakeholders. And like, and so like do the small things, like first learn what their fears are and then do things to help them feel better. And then I would say in terms of synthesizing for impact, start with the questions and goals that your stakeholders are trying to achieve, and then report directly on those questions or goals. So if as a stakeholder, my research question is like, you know, why do so many people buy dogs? You know, I would like.
They look like Poncho. Poncho's so cute.
In my report, I would say, you know, theme. Why do so many? Or a question. Why do so many people buy dogs? This is the evidence that we found. So, like, my report would directly answer the goals and questions that people had.
Yeah.
And that's how you start to deliver impact, because like you're answering their questions. And that means you have to go back to the beginning and ask them the questions that they have and the goals that they have for the research, so that you can then align your study and your insights with that. Yeah.
I mean, like one of the key challenges there, I think, is getting over your own passion for dogs then, or maybe you're pretty passionate about cats. So you're like, I don't want people to buy dogs, but, you know, yeah. So I think it's also a little bit on this ego side as well to also kind of get that. We have a really good question about like biases and stuff. And so it says like, how do you avoid biases from creeping into your research? Because some of the questionnaires, for example, have taken before seem to be pretty biased. So like, whilst you want to report on why people buy dogs, I love that this conversation is again about Poncho, but why do people want to buy dogs? But like, maybe you have a bias for cats, or maybe you have certain biases from the organization, or maybe people just aren't interested in buying dogs. How do you control this and some of the challenges there?
Yeah, so we are humans, at least to my understanding, most of us are. So we have inherent bias. There is nothing you can do to control your biases 100%. The things that you can do are to understand the different kinds of biases that we encounter, or that can encounter in participants. One of the main biases that comes up the most is social desirability bias. Yeah, there's two cats. There's one here, which you can't see, and this one. Social desirability bias means essentially, I want to appear like a good person to you, to everybody. Which means as a participant, I might answer things untruthfully. If you lead me in certain directions, I might go where you're leading me, or I might answer in a way that's favorable for you. So with that, we need to make sure it's kind of going back to like open-ended questions where people like don't get an indicator of how you want them to answer. So Poncho's just chilling. So I mean, kind of like, I would say be aware of those biases. There are plenty of them, like look them up, study them, be aware of them, write them down, write down ones that you think you might fall victim to often, more often than not. And then what I would say is if you're walking into a research session and you have any assumptions or biases or thoughts about the person you're about to talk to, write them down on a piece of paper, get them out of your mind. So something that I do before sessions where I feel like I'm going to bring bias is write down all of my biases on a piece of paper, fold it up, put it to the side. They're there, and now I'm clear.
Yeah, that's a really good trick.
Yeah, it's just like by asking the question, you're already partway there because you're aware. So you just need to have that level of awareness and keep that level of awareness. And then also like ask open-ended questions that don't give people a reason to understand where you want them to go or what you want them to say.
Yeah. We have another question on the biases, and I thought I might as well just throw it in right now as well, because you kind of mentioned that as well in some of the techniques that you use to counter your biases. Joshua, thank you for asking this. It says, what do you think about building rapport with somebody, being someone that interviews and can be open without just telling you what you want to hear due to affinity bias? So like, what do you think? What do you think about building rapport, or, you know, this kind of thing?
So
how do you do that?
I think some people would call me too friendly.
Yeah, me too. I have that problem as well. Everyone just loves me as well.
It's so tough. But I think like for me, like I enjoy building rapport with my participants. So I always warm up with them by saying, by like asking them like genuine questions about their life. Like I will not just dive into like a research session. I will be like, hey, like what are some hobbies that you have? What have you been doing recently? What do you like to do in your free time? Like what have you watched on Netflix, etc. And like I am like genuinely interested in that person. And like that's kind of how I build rapport. And I am not like a very like scientific, like make sure that I'm not leaning in too much, or, make sure that I'm like, my tone of voice doesn't get too excited. Like I can't do that. And that's just a downfall of my personality. I'm aware of it. So I try not to say things like great, good, awesome. I used to do that all the time when people responded. I'm like, oh, that's great. Instead now I'm just like, oh, okay, or thanks for sharing, or okay, those kinds of like more neutral indicators that you're paying attention. But like, I think it's important to build rapport. And I tend to also research sometimes really heavy topics. And for those heavy topics, you've got to build rapport before.
Yeah.
You have to no, that's actually wrong. You have to be interested in that person.
Yeah. I think that with the heavier subjects and building rapport, it's really, really interesting as well. And especially also finding what makes them tick and passionate, but also using your professional levels. And that is, I would say, something that comes with experience, right? I would say.
Yeah. And it's also like, find your own like pace and tone and kind of way of doing things. Because if you try too hard one way or the other, either to be too friendly or not friendly enough, you will come off, ironically, sounding like a robot, rather than a human. And so find the space that you feel comfortable in and where you are your most genuine, with, of course, that level of professionalism that's involved. And, use that. And you're not going to be perfect every time. There are times when I'm too friendly, and it is what it is. But find where you feel comfortable and stick in that spot, because then people will open up to you more. I mean, I've cried during research sessions.
Yeah.
And it's not like I cry during every research session, but like I've cried, maybe like a handful, except for when, maybe I'm bored and crying. No, but I've cried maybe like a handful of times. And like I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews, and like a handful of times I've cried, and it is what it is.
Yeah. I love that human side of it as well. I think that's also something that people tend to forget when you're in these roles, to also cut yourself some slack and enable you to develop. So there's two other topics that I want to get onto before we have to wrap it up, and because they're really asked also in the chat, but also in the questions from the crowd. And thank you everyone for putting forward those questions
during registration.
And one question, I guess, is around recruitment, and the other one is around synthesis. So we talked a little bit about bias and how you actually conduct research and doing this kind of things. I would love to know, like, maybe your top tips for how do you find the right people. You also said B2B is also quite challenging to recruit for, but how do you recruit the right people? How do you get them to I guess participate also when it becomes to different research methods, not just quantitative research interviews, but maybe diary studies or ethnographic studies or whatever you might be doing? What are some tips that you offer to people that are maybe recruiting?
Just in case we have newcomers who aren't user researchers in the audience, which I'm sure we do, we're not talking about recruitment for hiring a user researcher for these things. We're talking about recruiting people to ask questions, ask user research questions too. I didn't explain that well at all, but that's something that could be confusing.
Yes.
So,
and also, what happens when you do recruit someone for a user interview and they actually think it's an interview for the job?
I must say that has never happened to me.
Really? Oh, I've had that happen a couple of times.
I
mean, they signed up for the user researcher, but thinking that they could get a job out of the interview.
Okay. Yes, that has happened.
Poncho gets me. Yeah.
Yes, Poncho's like, oh dear. Yes, I have had people sign up for user research sessions for very weird reasons. That included, I had somebody try and ask me on a date. That was interesting. It's like, this is really uncomfortable.
Hate to brag, but I've also had that too.
Hate to brag at all.
No.
To brag.
Sorry, yes, back to recruitment. What are some of the challenges that you have recruiting? What are some tips that you have as well?
Yeah. So recruitment is arguably like, it's my least favorite part. I think it's most people's least favorite part because it's just like, oh, it's always a slog. Like, even if it's easy to get people, it's like, we got to think about this. We got to think about the number of people, how we're going to get to them, like how much we're going to pay them, or however we are synthesizing. It is horrible. I would say if I could remove anything, I would remove recruitment from user research. That's why there are so many recruitment agencies, because everybody hates it. What I would say is, in order to make sure that you're getting the right people, sometimes what the trap that I see people fall into is like recruiting via demographics. Demographics don't actually tell us anything about the person. So like, if you're trying to find people who like to travel, why are we recruiting like single, like 30, like people who are like 30 to 60? Like, that doesn't tell you that you're getting the right people. You might, as I said, be lucky and find some single people from 30 to 60 who like to travel. Fine. But the way that you do it is you think about behavior. What behavior do you want them to have done in the past 3 to 6 months? So that's how you start to get the right people. Because if you think about that, what I would say is we want like avid travelers. So we want people who travel often. So a great screener question is, how often do you travel? How often have you traveled in the past 3 months or 6 months? You know, and then you have your different options, like I haven't traveled at all. Well, I mean, barring COVID. And then you have like 1 to 3 times, 4 to 6 times, more than 7 times. That way, you know who you are picking. You are picking people who have traveled in the past 6 months, like more than 7 times. You are getting traveling people, you know, and then you could even go deeper into that and say like, how often have you traveled for business? How often have you traveled for leisure? You know, how often have you traveled with friends versus family? So like, it's thinking like, what are the characteristics or behaviors you want people to exhibit, and ask questions based on that. That's how you get the right people. I made a huge mistake once, actually, when I was working in a travel company. I was trying to get people to come in and explain to me their process of booking travel. And so I forgot to ask a question in the screener. So I asked like, when's the last time you traveled? Like, how did you, like, what are some inspirations that you used? And I had a few people come in, and luckily it was just like 2 people before I realized my mistake, where I was like, okay, cool. Like, let's sit down, like walk me through like the last time you booked a trip, like your last trip, starting with like the trigger point. And this person like deadpan was like, oh, I don't book my trips, my wife does. And I was like, cool, we have 90 minutes. What are we gonna do? Yeah. So like asking those behaviors and making sure that like you're asking that specific information that you need them to have characteristics or behaviors or traits is important in getting the right people. At the end of your interviews, if it was a good participant, ask them if they have any other recommendations for participants. Snowball effect. This is especially relevant in B2B. B2B is so tough. Getting
everyone just pulled out their phones.
Yeah.
It's a really good tip.
We've got note takers happening all over it.
Yay. So always doing that, asking for like, recommendations within that B2B, and try your best. If there's a good participant, try to start building a participant panel, even if it's tiny, even if it's 10 people, it doesn't matter. Ask people if they would be willing to like give you your contact details to come back for subsequent studies and stuff like that. And then if you're in B2B, like think about your account managers, think about sales reps, think about customer support, B2B or B2C. Customer support is a great way to recruit. So you, and also like put your recruitment screener survey in marketing newsletters, like put it in the signature of your email, like put it everywhere so that people can access whatever it is that you need them to access to sign up for studies. Or just hire an agency.
Yes, hire, spend the money, or if you don't spend the money, then also like think
Spend
about
the
this.
time.
I remember like even starting with Facebook groups and connections and tagging people. And one question that I like to end interviews is with, if you were going to recommend this XYZ topic to someone or product, or especially for concept tests, then I normally get them to recommend and say how they would recommend it to them as well. So I think it's a really good tip. Okay, so the second topic, of course, this is on recruitment, and I would love to just get your thoughts before we run out of time on the synthesis part, because there's quite a few questions there as well around what are some of the challenges that come around when trying to synthesize this information, analyzing the data, getting the best value out of it. And I think we touched a little bit on this ego thing and managing stakeholders, but how can we increase like better synthesis, and what tools and methods or tips do you have there for people that are struggling in this area?
The biggest challenge with synthesis is everybody wants to do it faster, but it shouldn't be done fast.
Yep.
You know, like you're supposed to actually spend double to triple the amount of time of the interview or session on synthesis. So if your research interview was an hour, you should be spending 2 to 3 hours just synthesizing that one.
Can I ask you one question? Because that's really interesting insight, and something that I'm pretty sure anyone that's done as a design sprint would be like, what? Can you break down, say if you're just doing like a standard 5-person concept test, what is like your time allocation for something like that in a project? Like, I'm not sure if you've done this in a while, but could you give us like, okay, this is how much time I'd plan for this, this, and this. So 5 times 1 hour interviews, let's say.
Okay. So just for the synthesis piece.
Or for being recruitment.
Oh, for
interviews,
everything.
like
Oh,
how much time would you plan for something like that? In an ideal world, of course.
Can we do a 5-person usability test? Because
yes, 5-person usability test.
Ideally, concept tests should be actually closer to 15 to 20 people. 5-person usability test. Okay, recruitment depends on how niche we're going, but let's say we are not super niche, would be about 1 week, maybe 5 days. Say we are more niche, would be 1 to 2 weeks for recruitment. During that recruitment, however, to be efficient, you can start interviewing as soon as you get people on the schedule. So you can be recruiting and interviewing during the same week. That is very important if your recruitment takes a long time. The actual tests, we have 5 tests. What each of them is an hour. I am a snob and I prefer not to do more than 2 tests in 1 day. That's just what I say now because, hey, I can say it. And if somebody forces me to do 3 tests in 1 day, I will say fine, but I'm never doing it again. And I have a problem saying no, so I will probably do it again, but I'll be upset. And so that takes, the 5 tests takes about a week, let's say, because after each test, let's say it's 1 hour test, you should do a 30-minute debrief. So the whole session is an hour and a half. So 1 hour testing session, 30-minute debrief. And then what I would do is within 24 hours of that session, I would go listen to this transcript, or sorry, listen to the audio and video, type up a transcript of it, and then start to tag that transcript. That takes about 1 hour ish, maybe an hour and a half. So we're already at 2 hours for that one interview between the debrief session and the tagging and transcript. So after each of those, so that's about a week where you have your interviews, your tagging, your transcript writing, your tagging, and your debrief sessions. Then I will hold another synthesis session that following week where it's like half a day because it's 5 interviews. We've already done debrief sessions, so 3-4 hours. And then writing a report, usability test, about a week. So we're at anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah. Wow. Nice. I think everyone's screaming. I think everyone's screaming like, wow, I've never had so much time ever in my life to do that for user research. But yeah, I think that's good. I think it's good to be reminded how it really should be done, could be done.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
honestly, like, these are all ideals. I've done usability testing in 1 week. I mean, think about like design sprints. You do usability testing in like what, like a day? You know, like, and
Yeah.
it's like, it doesn't mean that you have to do that in 3 to 4 weeks. If you have the ability to do it faster, then by all means, go for it. You know, like, or if you don't have the time, then you have to find ways to lean out your process, which means like looking at your process, looking at the ideal and saying, okay, this is the ideal. It's 1 week too long. Where can I cut down? Maybe you don't do the end synthesis session. Maybe you just do the debriefs. And maybe what you do is you take those debriefs and you just throw those into a report. And that makes your report writing faster because you've already debriefed each session. So you already have the structure for the report. You know, so like there are ways, of course, around this where you can do research faster, but like at a certain point, like we're going to be doing research in a day if we keep trying to like do it faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
And it's like research isn't like, there is still like a scientific rigor and to research. Like there's a point to why it takes longer and why it's taken so long to get into the product development phase, you know, because it's just not naturally fit into like tech and product culture. But yeah, take your time as much as you can.
There's a comment in the chat here that you actually hijacked that question about synthesis and turned it into your own question, which was very interesting and useful. But now the question about synthesis is still there. Like, I can't remember what it was, but about really like tools, tips, methods kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What tools and tips do you have for better synthesis?
So as I mentioned,
we get there eventually. We go around the topic and it's like a spiral, you know.
How can we increase insights by improving our synthesis?
Yeah.
Sorry, say that one more time. How do we increase what?
How can we increase insights through learning how to do better synthesis, and what tools and tips do you have? Yeah.
Okay. Something that I would say is come up with a process. I will share in the resources it's a Miro board for debriefs and synthesis. So what I would say is like, please try and do debriefs because they make synthesis easier in the end. So what this is like, it's a way to just say, what are the key takeaways from that participant? What are the major pain points? What were the goals and needs of that participant? Like really quick within that 30 minutes, able to kind of like do that. That's something that I highly recommend. When it comes to synthesis, there are a few ways to kind of look at it. You can think about global tags. And what I mean by global tags are things like pain points, goals, needs. And that plays to the kind of like that debrief session where you're putting together like, okay, what were the major pain points that came up for the majority of participants? What were the major needs that came up for the majority of participants? So that's kind of one way to do that. And the other way that I would say is kind of what we talked about before is actually synthesizing via research goal. So that's like, this is the research goal. What is the evidence that we found that helps us answer these questions or this goal? I feel it's so hard because synthesis, it's so vague and it's something that you really need to kind of like practice and do. But what I would say is like, find a lot of times what we try and do, and this is what I tried to do, is I tried to copy and paste somebody else's process. And that didn't really end up working. So gather a few different methods of how people synthesize and try a few and then kind of like create your own. Like for all of this stuff, you need to create your own process. Like I love Miro, I love sticky notes. And I like global tags. That's how I synthesize. So like if I have a large scale study, you will see my reports will kind of be like, here are the major pain points that we found, here are the major needs that people have. So like my reports tend to look into that because that's how I think about synthesis. And because that's how I was taught from a very young age. And so you need to find what feels most comfortable for you when it comes to synthesis. But number one recommendation, do your debriefs after your session because they will make your life so much easier in the end.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. I hope that we got that one properly answered for you, Katerina, as well. And the final topic that I want to dive into before we do have to say goodbye is, of course, this whole new world of hybrid events and hybrid, working remote work, COVID, all of these key tag words. And I think that proposes a great many challenges. And we did have quite a lot of questions, one from Joshua, one from Anonymous. It's so good that the hacker group has decided to join us. But Joshua asked, how have you needed to adapt to work in a remote environment? What are the advantages, limitations? And then Anonymous asked also like tips on doing ethnographic research remotely. So like how is that going for you? I mean, Jersey is a small island. How's that also going from all the way out there as well?
Yeah. So I actually have been doing remote research for years.
Okay.
I worked at like a company that had a global presence. And so it obviously made sense that we were doing remote research because I wasn't going to jet all around the world to talk to our different clients and accounts. So what happened is I got introduced to Zoom, like back when Zoom was like, what's this? I think like we started with blue jeans. Did that ever like make it into Europe, blue jeans?
Yeah, I think we also have black and gray jeans as well, but no, sorry. Yeah, the software from Facebook. Yes, blue jeans did.
Oh, it's from Facebook. See,
I think so, right?
I think so
I have no
too.
idea.
Yeah.
We're 50% sure here.
Yeah.
I'm wearing gray jeans today, so that might answer the question. Sorry. All right, let's go on. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So I ended up doing remote user research to tackle many more different like segments of users when it comes to like demographics and culture and things like that. So I think that actually this is like for once here, silver lining for COVID, it's opened up remote research, which is extremely important. You can't talk to just like this amount of your user base that you can find in person. You need to expand. And so COVID has helped with like advancing that technology and kind of like the popularity of it. Now, that being said, it kind of takes away from some things, body language, for instance. That's something that you kind of lose with remote research. And then you also lose, the contextual inquiry. So like going and actually observing people in their day-to-day, which might actually come back at one point in life, but if it doesn't, that's why we have diary studies. And that's why diary studies exploded, because diary studies is like the answer to ethnographic research remotely. And so I would say, like, if you're looking to do like that kind of ethnographic research, then diary studies is something that would be helpful for you to look into. And another thing that you can do, which is like similar to diary studies, but not exactly, is have people like record themselves or a trigger moment or something and like send it to you, instead of like a diary study, which is like across a certain period of time, send it to you more on like a one-off. So you can like request that. And I would say the other thing is technology is not inherent for all of us. So something that I have seen is a lot of like people, like populations, who struggle with technology, such as getting onto Zoom or understanding Figma links and things like that. The best thing that you can do is send them an email that has a video of you explaining how to do it. That's the best thing that you can do for populations who you feel might struggle with technology, because if you get on the phone with them, it's much different than actually showing them how to do it on your own screen. Even better bonus points, have somebody, like if you're a Mac user or an Apple user, have somebody else record the Android or the Windows version of that as well, so that you have both versions and you can send it out to people who have a hard time, who might have a hard time with technology. But honestly, like, we should be doing more remote research. It's not that bad, like it's pretty cool. Like, you know, I'm here on this small island and we can chat and it's awesome. And I can chat with whomever I want across the world. And like, yes, you lose some body language and some context, but you're still getting the depth at which you need for research.
Yeah. Yeah, great. I think that's a really good answer. And as well, maybe, we have one question about the Hawthorne effect. Actually,
I just had to Google it. I didn't know.
we had to Google what the Hawthorne effect was.
You know what it is? Yeah.
Hawthorne.
That people, can I say
Yes,
it?
go for it.
So I sound smart, even though I told you I just Googled. That people's behavior can change based on the fact that they know they're being observed. So how do you address that? It's the question specifically talks about remotely, right? But maybe in person too.
Yeah, sure. So you can't obviously completely get this out of, like, the Hawthorne effect will be here with us while we do any kind of usability testing. So something that
should also probably be there as well, I would assume, if you, doesn't matter. I just had a weird image of someone looking in my window. But anyway, I assume that we need the Hawthorne effect in some cases. Sorry to interrupt. Go on, Nikki, please.
I wrote a book about that. No. Yes, it will not go away. We are here. We are simulating an environment. We have to be okay with that. We can't not be okay with that. If you are a designer and you're testing your own designs, lie to participants. Say, these are not my designs, because they shouldn't be, because people shouldn't know that. The thing, like, there is no wrong answer. You're not being tested on anything. Please, we invite critical feedback. All of those things are there to mitigate this kind of effect that you're having on people. But the best thing that you can do is probe and prove to them that you want critical feedback by asking the right questions. So when they say, this is great, don't just say, yay, that's awesome, because that is then like not making it any better. You know, ask them why it's great. What does great mean? What could be better? Like, continue to ask them those questions until they maybe feel a little bit more comfortable in terms of answering more truthfully. You will get people who don't answer truthfully no matter what you do. It happens, but just, you know, we're not going to get rid of that effect as much as it would be nice. Diary studies might help to mitigate that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we're almost at that time, but there's a couple more questions.
I love these two.
Okay, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, it's okay. They're from the ones we've already seen. Those last two that kind of, I feel like, could be related. How do you pursue a freelance career in UX research? And the second one, how do you handle a whole UX research project, a whole research project on your own? Which I feel like the relatedness of those is, if you're a freelancer, maybe you're doing projects on your own. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Sure. How do you get into freelance user research? You have to do a lot of like networking, unfortunately. So something that I saw a huge shift in is when I started like writing about user research. I brought more visibility to like myself and to my like brand. So any way that you can bring more visibility to your brand as like a credible source is a great way to like boost your status, I guess, as a researcher. Then the networking aspect of it as well, get to know other user researchers, but not networking to get the job. That has always failed me. Network to know your network to meet people, network to like learn new ideas, network to see what other people are up to see how other companies do things, to learn different perspectives. And then that will also help you find work. Because like whenever you intend to try and get something out of the world, like it doesn't always end up being as fruitful as you might want it to be. So your intention of like networking should not necessarily be like, I want a job. It's like, I want to understand how people are doing things and like how different companies are working. And then you're in a better place as well, because you have different understandings to kind of like pivot yourself as a freelancer. You know, you're like, oh, I know like companies' pain points. I know the things that they get wrong. I know how I can help them. So I would say like the number one thing is like bringing visibility to yourself. And please don't ever don't message me and say that you can't write. Everybody can write. And don't also say that there are no such thing as new ideas, because yes, there aren't, but your ideas are different and unique to anybody else's. So writing is a great way. You could record YouTube videos, you know, you could draw, you could do anything like that kind of like exhibits like who you are as a researcher. That brings more credibility to your brand, and putting yourself out there, like ask people if you can talk at their like meetups, you know, like put yourself out there, like give into like that community, help people, mentor people. Like I did not charge people for mentorship 2 years ago. Like I was mentoring people for free for like a year or two. I was doing my introduction to user research class live. It was an 8-week class, intensive. I was mentoring those people, doing their reviewing their homework, reviewing their recordings, like every Sunday on the call for 3 hours a week, like doing that. And it was like 10 people, did it all for free.
Yeah.
Never do it forever for free. But like do things like give back to people, and like your name will get out there, comment on things, like be part of the community. And that's the best way to like get freelance jobs, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's also answers Kelly's question in Slido as well, like tips for finding clients and that you're starting as a freelance. I guess she asked more specifically how to charge. Maybe you can also answer this, but I guess it also depends. But I think like that, yeah, giving back. I mean, that's also been mine and Dee's philosophy a lot in design as well. And I think it's also, yeah, being great. Yeah, so if anyone has any work out there, that'd be, no, I'm joking. Sorry, go on. Yes.
For charging, I can't answer that because it depends so much on where you are currently located. UXR conference or something had a salary. I will find it and I will send it in the resources. It's like salaries for user researchers. I can't remember if they had freelance on there, but I will send it out and maybe you could do some calculations. When you charge, just keep in mind, I'm not sure where you are, but if you're like in the United States, insurance costs a lot of money, or like health insurance costs a lot of money. So like, and same with holidays, because you don't get paid time off. So just remember like to incorporate those things into your amount, like not just what you want to take home from work, but also holidays and health insurance and like those other costs. And there was one other question about how to do research alone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I will answer this really quickly. Try not to do it alone.
Yeah.
So if you can, like, you should be collaborating with people like along the life cycle of a research project. So like kind of what I mentioned earlier on, like with like talking to stakeholders, like what kind of like you should be talking with your colleagues to see like what kind of questions you have, what kind of like information do you want, what kind of decisions do you want to make from this research and from this project. And so like in that sense, you're like not alone, because like if they come to you with a research request, you should have questions about like, what does this mean? Like, what exactly do you need? You can work with them together on recruitment. But like if like I've done them in a vacuum as well, completely alone, and you just need to feel comfortable in your process. And like I come back to this, I'm sorry to kind of hammer this in, but like you need to create your own process.
Yeah.
And that just takes time. Like, so you're going to do something, if you're going to do a project alone, you're going to fail at some part of it. And that needs to just be okay. And like, you might jump to certain conclusions that might not be right from synthesis because you don't have people to bounce ideas off of, but that has to be okay. Like, you just need to learn how to get better at doing this on your own by doing it alone. And trying to involve people as much as you can throughout the process, such as like with the kickoff, like kind of like coming up with a research plan together, with debriefs, with synthesis, like all of that. But like, if you have to do it alone, just like find your place and find a process that fits with you and run with it and see how it goes and iterate. Like my process changed so much from when I started, and like that's just because I did it a million times.
Yeah. Cool. Nice. Do it a million times is, I think, the key takeaway here. For no, it's been an absolute pleasure. We have still so many questions in Slido, but I think we'll go back to the offer and we'll try and answer those maybe either through LinkedIn, or maybe we can have a deep dive into them. And in the replay, in the email, we'll send out the post event email. Yeah, I think that's it. There was one special announcement which you gave us to give to everyone, which is, let me go back to my thingy here. Let's see if there's, I hope there's nothing embarrassing there, but anyway. I hope everyone can see the screen. Is that you also offer everyone here like a 15% off of the course that you were talking about, so Intro to User Research course, which is really awesome.
Yay,
yeah,
thank you.
That's really cool. Can you tell us a little bit about this quickly?
Yeah, sure. So for this course, this is kind of like a deep dive in like very specifically like how do you do user research. So for the person who was asking like how do I do user research alone, how do I deal with that process, this course covers that like end-to-end process from like when research lands on your desk, so when that request comes in, all the way through to reporting and then like following up with stakeholders. So yeah. I mean, like, it's like, I think it's over 50 videos in there. Like it goes very in depth. You kind of get to see all of the things that I do during like my research projects. And I go through like specific, very, very specific examples in there as well. So I know that it can be hard, like when we're talking abstract about theory. But in that course, I go through like pretty specific examples to help you kind of tie that like from the theory to like the application of it. And I also offer like a monthly Q&A. So you can talk to me every month based on like what you're like kind of questioning or stuck on, or just in general. And then also I'm partnering with a certain platform, and we'll have actual data for you to play with that I'm incorporating into my course. So that is coming next year. So it will go from like really that theory and some practicality to like much more practical, where you can also watch me doing interviews. You can see screeners that I put together for this, and you can actually play around with data and synthesize it.
Sounds like an awesome kickoff to starting to find your own process for how you do user research.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to do it. I'll sign up to it. All right, massive thank you. I think this was brilliant, and we thank you everyone for joining us here today. I hope you also got a lot out of it. All the questions that we got from Slido and from the crowd were fantastic, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, Nikki. A massive round of applause from us.
Yay! Maybe she can't be ready.
Yeah. There was actually an applause.
Yeah.
That felt strange. My ears are bleeding. No, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. I have to say, like, you're an inspiration, and you have so much great content out there as well. If anyone hasn't read through the many articles, some of my favorites are like how to conduct workshops and moderation and when to do these kind of things. I often share them in my own courses and my teaching. So great resources also to help you along the way as a service designer as well. Any last questions? No, that's it.
Oh, Miro board.
Oh yeah, the Miro board. We would love that. We'll grab the link from Nikki and send it to you in our wrap-up email. I think that's probably the easiest way to do that. Yeah, so we'll collect all of those notes and go from there. If anyone has something to announce, you can also put that into the chat if you have an event coming up, or if you have a job. We would love you to throw that in the chat, or you can throw that into Slido as well. We will also add that to the wrap-up email. So if you have a job, I know that Zalando is also hiring.
If you're looking for a job, or if you have a job to offer?
Both, I would say. Yeah, okay. Maybe. Well,
I have a job. Do you have a job?
I have a job. I can tell you all about it. No, if you're looking to recruit people, not in the user research sense, but in the working sense, then you can also put those links to us. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's all falling to bits. No, you can give those links to us and we will put them in our wrap-up email, which is a fantastic, great list of resources for everyone. Some people told us that our wrap-up emails are the most important thing of the event. That was my
Don't know
mum.
how to take that.
Yeah, anyway, no. Our next event is not on August 1st. It's not on August 4th at all. We're sorry about that. Our next and final event will be, sorry about that, will be, oh gosh, I don't even know the date. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It'll be the first Wednesday of November, which is November the 3rd. I'm glad we got that finally for you. We will be having, fingers crossed, Mark Stickdorn, who is the author of Service Design Thinking and Service Design Doing, sharing some of his great tools from Snaply and a bunch of actually user research tools, which are great to use as well. Yeah, but I would say that is it from us. So thank you everyone for joining online. This was a fantastic event. Thank you so much again, Nikki. We had a blast, and thank you everyone here that came in person as well.
Yeah.
Wow. Success, I would say. Have an amazing night. You can be sure to check out the email with all the links and with all the information coming to your inbox soon.
Days, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and thank you, Poncho, too, of course. How could I forget? Poncho, thank you for being the star of the show. We will send your reimbursement and compensation in doggy treats soon. That's way too cool for us, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Thanks very much, Nikki.
Thank you.
Bye. Yay.
I'll just